time. I call the member for Upper Hunter.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Speaker. I rise to speak on the Residential Tenancies and Housing Legislation Amendment, Public Housing Antisocial Behaviour Bill 2015. The bill aims to make social housing a much safer place for vulnerable people who live in it and to address the antisocial, illegal and fraudulent behaviour of many. Antisocial and criminal behaviour has been a challenge for the social housing system as identified by the Public Accounts Committee in 2014. The primary goal of this bill is to improve the behaviour of a minority of tenants engaging in antisocial, illegal and fraudulent behaviour, and importantly, creating safer communities for the majority of law-abiding tenants, including those who are ageing and vulnerable. The proposals are an election commitment as well as a key element of the government's reform of social housing. In speaking to this bill, I wish to highlight why it is important to improve social housing, the social housing system to protect law-abiding residents and focus on those who do the wrong thing and demonstrate complete disregard for their neighbours and society's expectations of our fellow citizens. In my own electorate, as in all others, we have a vast majority of people doing the right thing most of the time. The community generally believes that too often laws are made that support minorities, and in this case it is clear that with this bill, the government is proposing to enact law that support the majority. Unfortunately, we also have a small minority of people who feel it is somehow acceptable to run illegal businesses such as drug dealing and manufacture. Additionally, police in the area command of Hunter Valley tell me that in one particular area in Muswellbrook, statistics show that criminal activity is 435% higher than in other parts of the same town, with break and enter, malicious damage and domestic violence making up the significant majority of the reported criminal activity. I recently spoke with a police officer about the local statistics, and his comment to me when I told him what the bill was proposing was, and I will quote, "It's about time. We are wasting time, public money, and we're getting nowhere," unquote. When compared to other areas in the same town, these figures are quite alarming and not only flout community expectation and taxpayer support for appropriate housing, it is more frightening for the local residents who want to simply have a good life and bring up their children in a safe, happy and supportive environment regardless of social housing or not. Importantly, we know it is a minority of people causing the problem, and we need to focus our efforts on weeding out those people to provide a safe and secure environment for the majority. I myself grew up in a Housing Commission home in Lower Park. I spent my first 15 years there and have never forgotten the caring nature of the majority of people in the community. I have great memories of a childhood where people looked out for each other, supported each other and shared our experiences in a productive and fun way, where my parents knew that I could play in the parks or go and visit my friends and neighbours and spend all of my time basically outside, all in the knowledge that I was safe and I was not exposed to undue influences. So I can relate to the frustrations of the majority. Mr Deputy Speaker, although it is not part of the bill does not require as it does not require legislation. Family and Community Services will also introduce a policy of probationary tenancies for new tenants who would otherwise be given 5 or 10-year leases. This will provide new tenants with a period of time where they can demonstrate that they can meet their tenancy obligations before securing a longer lease. The bill seeks to amend the Residential Tenancies and Housing Acts to introduce a one-strike policy that will require the New South Wales Civil and Administrative Tribunal to make a determination order for breach of social housing tenancy agreement where the occupant has been charged with illegally storing firearms or show cause offences under the Bail Act, particularly drug supply or manufacturing and violence involving grievous bodily harm. Require the NCAT to terminate a social housing tenancy in certain other serious cases unless there are exceptional circumstances. Introduce a 3 strikes policy to deal with introduce a three-strikes policy to deal with repeated low-level antisocial behaviour by recording strikes against tenants for breaches of social housing tenancies and where 3 strikes occur within a 12-month period to seek a termination order. Introduce neighbourhood impact statements to assist the NCAT to understand the effect of antisocial or illegal behaviour has had on neighbouring residents and other persons. Reinstate the previous arrangement overturned by a recent NCAT decision where a tenant has fraudulently claimed a rent subsidy, the debt arising is treated as rent in arrears, not a separate civil debt. This makes it easier to recoup the money. Limit the period in which an order for possession of social housing premises is to take effect to 28 days except in exceptional circumstances. Ensure that the actual cost of damage are carried out by tenants is actually recouped. Provide facts with powers similar to those given to other agencies and to gather information for the purposes of investigating fraudulent claims for rental subsidies and extend the prosecution period to 12 months following detection of rental fraud. I think if I can go back to one of those points where it is aimed to ensure that the actual cost of damage carried out by the tenants is recouped, let's put this into some perspective. In the financial year 2013-14, some $10.5 million worth of damage, tenant damage, was paid for by the taxpayer in New South Wales. $10.5 million provides a lot more homes and a lot more safe housing for a lot more decent people. I think it's important that we understand, even in my own wider area in Hunter, New England area, over $1.8 million was spent just in tenancy damage. Not anything to do with maintenance, not anything to do with anything else, just damage. Willful damage, essentially, by these people who are antisocial and couldn't give two hoots about their neighbours or their friends around them, unfortunately. Mr Deputy Speaker, it is long overdue that we as a society, we say enough is enough to those that don't care for others. It is time that we do say enough is enough to those who blatantly treat our neighbours, our friends and our families, indeed treat the very decent people who ultimately pay for them with nothing but disrespect and danger. We will support those in need and we will not tolerate the behaviours of those in our communities we find unacceptable and downright dangerous to our well-being. I'll go back to what I said earlier about the fact that I grew up in Lalor Park in my first 15 years and my parents knew that I was in a safe environment. It was a product of the time, I suppose. It was a product of a caring community. And again, my parents knew, my neighbours knew that we could, as kids, we could go around, play in the parks, socialise ourselves, do all sorts of things without being in undue danger and without being under undue influence. This simple right and privilege should be afforded to everyone, and we need to weed out the majority who are wrecking it for everyone. Mr Deputy Speaker, I commend the bill to the House.